I need to tell you about the hardest decision I've ever made. Harder than leaving South Africa with nothing. Harder than risking everything on SpaceX when everyone said I'd fail. Harder than any business decision I've faced. 2 weeks ago, I canceled my wedding. Not postponed, canceled. 3 days before we were supposed to walk down the aisle, with 200 guests flying in, with deposits paid, with a dress hanging in the closet, I called it off. And I need to tell you why. Not because I want sympathy or attention, but because I learned something in those final days before the wedding that I think a lot of people need to hear. Something about honesty, about courage, about knowing when to say no to something everyone expects you to say yes to. This isn't a story about cold feet or commitment issues. This is about finally being honest with myself after months of pretending. And if you've ever felt like you're moving towards something everyone says you should want, but deep down, you know it's wrong, this is for you. Before I tell you what happened in those final 3 days, I need to know something. Have you ever said yes to something important when you knew, deep in your gut, the answer should be no? Have you ever moved forward with something because stopping felt harder than continuing, even though continuing felt wrong? If you have, drop a comment and say understand. Because what I'm about to share only makes sense if you've felt that conflict between what you know you should do and what's easier to do. Let me take you back to 6 months ago. I met Sarah at a charity event in Los Angeles. She was stunning, intelligent, accomplished, a successful lawyer, well-spoken, the kind of person who looks perfect on paper. Within weeks, we were dating seriously. Within 3 months, I proposed. Everyone was thrilled. My family loved her. My friends approved. The media called us a power couple. People kept telling me how lucky I was, how perfect we were together, how this was exactly what I needed. And I believed them. Or I wanted to believe them. Because believing them was easier than listening to the quiet voice in my head that kept saying, something's not right. But I ignored that voice. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was self-sabotaging, that I was scared of happiness because I was so used to work and stress. I told myself that what I was feeling was normal pre-wedding anxiety, that everyone feels doubt, that cold feet are expected. So I kept moving forward. We planned the wedding, sent invitations, picked flowers, chose a venue, did all the things you're supposed to do. And with every step forward, that quiet voice got a little louder, but I kept ignoring it. The breaking point came 3 days before the wedding. We were having dinner at my house, going over final details, seating charts, timeline, last-minute logistics, normal wedding stuff. And she said something that made everything click into place. We were talking about the honeymoon, and I mentioned wanting to visit the SpaceX facility in Boca Chica for a few hours. Just a quick stop. There was a critical test happening, and I wanted to be there. And she looked at me with this expression I'd seen before but never really processed, and she said, you know, after we're married, you're gonna need to get this under control. Get? What? Under control? I asked. This obsession with work, this need to always be involved in everything. You're gonna be a husband. You're gonna need to prioritize differently, act differently, be different. And there it was, the thing I'd been ignoring for months. She didn't love who I was. She loved who she thought I could become, who she planned to make me become. And I've been pretending that was okay because I didn't want to face the alternative. I sat there staring at this woman I was supposed to marry in 3 days, and I realized I don't actually know her, and she doesn't actually know me. We know the versions of each other we've been performing, the versions we thought the other person wanted to see, but the real us, we're strangers. What do you mean, act differently? I asked, even though I knew exactly what she meant. Come on, Elon. You know you're not normal. You work 80-hour weeks. You sleep at the office. You miss dinners and events because of some emergency at one of your companies. That's fine for a bachelor. But married men don't do that. Married men come home at reasonable hours. They're present. They put their family first. She wasn't wrong. I do work insane hours. I'm obsessed with my companies. I do miss things because of work emergencies. But here's what hit me in that moment. I don't want to change that. Not completely. Not in the way she was asking. My work isn't just what I do. It's who I am. It's not a job I clock in and out of. It's my purpose. It's what gets me up in the morning and keeps me up at night. And she was asking me to treat it like a hobby I needed to outgrow. So you want me to be someone different? I said quietly. I want you to grow up, she replied. I want you to understand that there are things more important than rockets and factories. I want a husband who's actually present, not someone whose mind is always somewhere else. And that's when I knew this wasn't going to work. Not because she was wrong to want those things, but because I couldn't give them to her. Not in the way she needed, not without resenting her, not without losing the part of myself that makes me who I am. We sat in silence for a long time, and I think she knew, even before I said anything, where this was going. I can't marry you, I said finally. I'm sorry, but I can't. The next 48 hours were a nightmare. Calling guests, canceling vendors, dealing with disappointed family members who couldn't understand why I was throwing away this perfect relationship. Facing Sarah's hurt and anger and confusion, she asked me over and over, why? Why now? Why 3 days before? Why not months ago, when we could have avoided all this? And the honest answer? I was a coward. I saw the signs months ago. I felt the misalignment, but I kept hoping it would resolve itself. I kept thinking, maybe I was wrong, maybe I was overthinking, maybe if I just committed harder, it would work out. But it wouldn't have. And marrying her anyway would have been the cruelest thing I could do to both of us. Here's what I learned from this disaster. Here's what I need you to hear, whether you're in a relationship or not, whether you're facing a wedding or any other major life decision. When your gut tells you something's wrong, it's wrong. Period. That feeling isn't anxiety, it isn't fear of commitment, it isn't self-sabotage. It's your deepest self trying to protect you from a mistake you're about to make. We're taught to ignore that feeling. We're taught that cold feet are normal, that doubt is expected, that commitment means pushing through uncertainty. And sometimes that's true, but sometimes doubt is your intuition screaming that you're about to make a terrible mistake. I ignored my gut for months because acknowledging it felt harder than ignoring it. Calling off a wedding 3 days before felt impossible, so I told myself I was just nervous. But calling off a wedding 3 days before is hard for 3 days. Going through with a wedding you know is wrong is hard for the rest of your life. Second thing I learned, you can't love someone into being who you need them to be, and they can't love you into being who they need you to be. Sarah wanted a husband who prioritized family time over work, who came home at 6, who could turn off his phone and be fully present. Those aren't unreasonable things to want, but they're not who I am. And pretending I could become that person was a lie that would have destroyed us both. I see this all the time, people getting into relationships with someone's potential instead of their reality, thinking they'll change once we're married, or they'll mature eventually, or they'll want different things after we have kids. But people don't fundamentally change, not in the ways that matter, not in their core identity. If you're in a relationship where you're constantly trying to change your partner, or they're constantly trying to change you, you're not in a relationship, you're in a renovation project. And people aren't houses. You can't strip them down and rebuild them into your preferred design. Third lesson, saying no to something good can be the right choice if it's not right for you. Everyone thought Sarah and I were perfect together. On paper, we were. Successful, ambitious, attractive, compatible in the ways society measures compatibility. But compatibility on paper doesn't mean compatibility in reality. She wasn't wrong for wanting what she wanted. I'm not wrong for wanting what I want. But those wants were fundamentally incompatible. And no amount of compromise would have bridged that gap without one of us losing ourselves. I think we're afraid to admit when something that looks good isn't actually good for us. We're afraid people will judge us. We're afraid we're being too picky or throwing away something we should be grateful for. So we stay in relationships that look right but feel wrong. But a relationship that looks perfect to everyone else is worthless if it makes you feel like you're slowly disappearing. Fourth thing, the courage to stop is harder and more important than the courage to start. Starting things is easy, exciting, full of possibility. Everyone cheers you on when you start. But especially stopping something everyone expects you to finish, that takes real courage. I was more scared to cancel my wedding than I was to start SpaceX with a 90% chance of failure. Because starting SpaceX, everyone understood, that fit the narrative of who I'm supposed to be. But canceling a wedding 3 days before, that makes you look unstable, commitment phobic, immature. But you know what's more immature than canceling a wedding? Going through with it when you know it's wrong, making promises you know you can't keep, wasting years of someone's life because you were too cowardly to be honest. The day after I called it off, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief, not happiness. The situation was too painful for happiness. But relief. The relief of no longer pretending. The relief of being honest. The relief of not having to perform a version of myself I could never sustain. And that relief told me everything I needed to know. If calling off your wedding makes you feel relief, you made the right choice. Here's what happened after. Sarah was devastated. Angry. She called me a coward for waiting so long. She's right. I should have been honest months earlier. I should have acknowledged the incompatibility when I first felt it, instead of hoping it would resolve itself. My family was confused. They loved Sarah. They thought she was good for me. They kept asking what went wrong, what I was thinking, whether I was having some kind of crisis. And maybe I was. But it was the right kind of crisis. The kind that wakes you up before you make an irreversible mistake. My friends split into two camps. Some supported me. Some thought I was sabotaging my own happiness. The ones who really knew me understood. The ones who knew the version of me I show the world didn't. And you know what? That's okay. People are going to judge you for honest choices. They're going to project their own fears and desires onto your decisions. They're going to tell you what you should want based on what they want, but they're not living your life, you are. So here's what I want you to take from this disaster. First, listen to your gut. That uncomfortable feeling you're ignoring, that's not fear of commitment or success or happiness. That's your deepest self telling you something's wrong. Trust it. Second, be honest earlier. I waited until 3 days before the wedding. That was cruel to Sarah and cowardly on my part. If you know something's not right, say it now. Don't wait for the right time. The right time is always now. Third, it's okay to want what you want. You don't have to apologize for your priorities, your choices, your way of being in the world. If someone can't love you as you actually are, they don't actually love you. They love their project of who they want you to become. Fourth, compatibility isn't about being the same. It's about accepting each other's differences. Sarah wanted me to be less obsessed with work. I needed her to accept my obsession with work. Neither of us was wrong. We were just wrong for each other. Fifth, what looks good to everyone else doesn't matter if it feels wrong to you. Stop making life decisions based on what will look good on social media, or what your family wants, or what society expects. You're the one who has to live with the consequences. And finally, saying no takes more courage than saying yes. We celebrate people who commit, who follow through, who finish what they start. But sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is stop. Is admit you made a mistake, is walk away from something everyone expects you to complete. I don't regret proposing to Sarah. I learned something important from our relationship. I learned that I'm not ready to compromise the way marriage requires. I learned that my work isn't something I do, it's who I am. I learned that I need a partner who understands that, not one who wants to fix it. And I learned that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. Here's what I'm doing differently now. I'm being honest about what I actually want instead of what I think I should want. I want someone who gets excited when I talk about rockets, not someone who tolerates it. I want someone who understands that missing dinner because of a work emergency is part of the deal, not someone who sees it as a problem to solve. I want someone who loves who I am, not who they think I could become. And if that person doesn't exist, I'm okay being alone. Because being alone with yourself is better than being lonely with someone else. If you're in a relationship right now and something feels off, don't ignore it. Don't tell yourself it's just anxiety or cold feet or fear of commitment. Sit with that feeling, explore it. Be honest about what it's telling you. And if you're moving towards something, a wedding, a move, a job, anything major that everyone says you should want but you're not sure you do, pause, really pause. Ask yourself, Am I doing this because I want it, or because I'm scared of disappointing people if I don't? Life is too short to spend it living someone else's vision for you. It's too short to marry someone you have to change to be with. It's too short to ignore your gut because honoring it feels hard. Canceling my wedding was the hardest thing I've ever done. It was also the most honest. And I'm learning that honesty, even when it's painful, even when it disappoints people, even when it makes you look unstable or commitment phobic, is always better than the alternative. Be honest, be brave, be yourself, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. That's the only way to build a life that's actually yours. Let me tell you something else I realized in the aftermath of calling off the wedding. Something about priorities that nobody talks about honestly. We're told that balance is the goal. Work-life balance. Equal time for career and relationships. Equal energy for ambition and family. But that's a lie. Or at least, it's a lie for people like me. And maybe for people like you. Some people are wired to prioritize relationships above everything else. They build their lives around the people they love. Their work serves their family. Their ambitions are secondary to their connections. And that's beautiful. That's valid. That's a completely legitimate way to live. But that's not me. And pretending I could be that person was the fundamental dishonesty that doomed my relationship with Sarah. My work comes first. Not because I don't value people, not because I'm incapable of love, but because my work is my purpose. It's what I was put on this planet to do. Building SpaceX, advancing Tesla, pushing humanity toward a multi-planetary future, that's not a job for me. It's a calling. It's a responsibility I can't set down just because someone wants me home for dinner. And I spent months feeling guilty about that. Sarah made me feel like there was something wrong with me for prioritizing my companies over our relationship. My family questioned whether I was capable of being a good husband. Friends suggested I needed therapy to address my workaholism. But here's what I finally understood. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken. I'm not avoiding intimacy or scared of vulnerability. I'm just clear about my priorities. And my priority is the work. That doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me an honest one. And it means I need a partner who accepts that, genuinely accepts it, not tolerates it while hoping I'll change. Sarah would say things like, I just want to feel like I matter as much as your companies. And I'd feel terrible, like I was failing her, like I needed to try harder to make her feel prioritized. But the truth is, she didn't matter as much as my companies. Not because she wasn't valuable or wonderful or deserving of love, but because my companies are my life's work. They're what I was built to do. And no romantic relationship was ever going to change that. I think we've created this cultural narrative where admitting your work comes first makes you a bad partner, where saying, my career is more important to me than this relationship, is unforgivable. But why? Why is it acceptable to prioritize relationships over everything else, but not acceptable to prioritize purpose over relationships? If someone told me they were choosing their family over their career, everyone would applaud them. They'd be called grounded, balanced, wise. But when I choose my work over a relationship, I'm called obsessed, unbalanced, emotionally unavailable. The double standard is insane, and it keeps people like me pretending to want things we don't want, pretending to be people we're not. Entering relationships we know won't work because admitting we prioritize work over romance feels like admitting we're broken. But I'm not broken. I'm just different. And so are you, if you've ever felt guilty for caring more about your work than your dating life. If you've ever felt like something was wrong with you because you'd rather stay late at the office than go home to someone. If you've ever been in a relationship and felt like you were being forced to choose between your purpose and your partner, share this with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's moving towards something that doesn't feel right. Someone who's ignoring their intuition because acknowledging it feels too hard. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever had the courage to stop something everyone expected you to finish? What happened when you finally listened to your gut?